hello from him,
Richard Moore, and it's hello from her.
It's Michelle Monro again, and I'm really excited today, Richard, not just by doing our podcast every month, but today marks our very first special guest. Now, he was born in Leighton, England, and like Dad, is a true East Londoner. And he became known nationwide after 6 winning appearances on TV's Opportunity Knocks, receiving along the way the Variety Club of Great Britain Award for Best New Artist of 1972. Now, this was presented to him by the late Lord Mountbatten of Burma and heralded the first of many appearances before members of the royal family. Now, for nearly 50 years, he's conquered the world as a pianist, songwriter, actor, broadcaster, presenter and television personality. Now, born 24 years after Daddy, he began working weekends in the pubs, an apprenticeship that many stars would admit to in later years. Another interesting connection that, while signed to the Philips UK label, his recordings were produced by Norman Newell. Now, in October 1984, a royal gala variety performance in the presence of Her Royal Highness the Princess Anne was presented at the Gaiety Theatre, Douglas and the Isle of Man, and included Dad and my special guest. So please welcome the wonderfully talented Bobby Crush.
Well, listen, Michelle, how am I going to follow that?
You're not. Bye-bye.
And yes, that's absolutely true. The first time I worked with your dad was in Douglas on a charity event for Princess Anne. And there's a picture, of course, of your dad and I on my website from that show.
Yes, so, I know.
So if any of your listeners care to go to my website, which is bobbycrush.com, they will see it. There's a very nice picture, one that I actually treasure, of your dad just sitting side by side having a chat. Neither of us knew that we were having our picture taken, and it's a really nice shot that I'm really proud to own.
Well, talking about the Royal Gala, as on most of these occasions, a star lineup had been cemented in place, including appearances from Bob Carolges and Spit the Dog, the Baron Knights, Stella Starr, Leslie Crowther, Dickie Henderson, yourself and Dad. Now, after the finale, according to the usual custom, of course, artists were presented to Her Royal Highness on stage. As a young man of only 30, what was that like?
Well, I had actually already by then done the actual Royal Variety performance and been presented to the Queen Mum.
Oh.
I think Princess Anne came about fourth or fifth in line in terms of royalty that I'd played to, because, as I say, I did a couple of things for Princess Margaret, and I did the Royal Variety for the Queen Mum. I did something for the Duke of Edinburgh, and I did something for Edward, and then I think I did the thing for Princess Anne. So how about that? I was slowly but surely working my way through the entire royal family.
Not bad for the CV, is it?
Not bad, old bag.
Well, Dad's bank call was at noon. Now, did you meet him that afternoon, or only when you were both presented to Her Royal Highness?
No, we spent the day because I think we were all flown over the night before, but we were all in different hotels because it was such a big lineup. I don't think one hotel could house us all. So I don't think your dad and I were staying at the same hotel the night before, but we certainly linked up around about lunchtime when everybody was gathered together for the band call. And I remember sitting and listening to your dad's band call and basically just being in awe, because you do know, of course, that I've always been a great fan. And in fact,
I thought that was a vicious rumour.
I'm a fan of yours as well, of course, for all the times that we've done cruise engagements together.
Oh, bless you.
One thing you might not know, and this is the absolute truth, the first 45 I ever owned as a kid was your dad singing My Kind of Girl.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that, no.
And you know what, I even remember what the B-side was, and it was a ballad called This Time.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah.
And I still have it somewhere. On my jukebox, of course, I do have Portrait of My Love.
Yes.
You're the You're the top of my hit parade on, which doesn't get played quite so often as the.
No.
I don't blame you. Richard, you're going to pipe in?
Yeah. So was that the only time that you met Matt, or did your paths cross at any other time?
We both of us did a lot of stuff for London Management. They were my agency. They were the people that I was signed to. I don't think your dad, Michelle, was ever signed to them, was he?
No, he wasn't.
Because he was looked after at that point exclusively by Don.
Yes, he did. Yeah, because basically, every song that John wrote, Daddy sang for him to help him out. And then there was, when Dad got his very first professional gig, it was paid £7 a week. And Mummy lent him a Mini. So he actually slept in the car. He didn't have enough to get there. So Don lent him £7, which was enormous back then. That was for petrol and, food for the week. And he never forgot the favour. And they actually shook as a management and artist by handshake. And that was it. No, they never signed a contract.
And then, of course, they proved to be wonderful for each other.
Yes, they did.
And Don Black, of course, has written over the years some marvellous stuff.
Oh, he's a great songwriter, yeah, lyricist. Yeah.
Yes.
Good night now. Is he a Sir? Is he a Sir Don Black?
Not as far as I know. I think he's a BE of some kind, but I don't think he's a.
Because if it's Sir Tim Rice, then it most certainly should be Sir Don Black.
Yeah, well, it should be Sir Bobby Crash, shouldn't it?
Well, I might not be a Sir, but I've been a dame.
I know, darling.
Well,
we'll
true.
get on to that.
Yes.
On numerous occasions. But Matt and I did find ourselves on bills together. But the major one, of course, was the Isle of Man gig where we performed in front of royalty.
Cool.
Do you have a favourite recording of Matt?
I have several. I love his version of Maria.
Oh, yes.
I'm a big Johnny Mathis fan, and I always thought that Johnny Mathis had the definitive version of Maria until I heard Matt. And now I think they're on a par, and I'd be at a loss to choose which one was my favourite. But I love.
Interestingly, if you hear the Spanish version of Maria, the Spanish version Daddy did of Maria.
Yeah.
It is even better. The breath control is sublime. We'll send it to you.
Oh, how lovely!
Yeah. Now listen, you've been playing the piano since the age of 4 and playing in front of the public at the age of 13, turning pro at the ripe old age of 18. Now, what's your favourite childhood memory?
My favourite childhood memory? Oh, my word. Oh, I have... well, in terms of playing the piano, my favourite childhood memory is hearing applause for the first time, being called upon to play at school assembly, and receiving an ovation upon completion of my interpretation of Spanish Flea by Herb Alpert, which came as a big surprise to all of my teachers, because I think they were expecting me to play a hymn or something a little bit more appropriate for a morning assembly. But it went da, 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 da. And of course it was a hit in the charts at that point, and all the kids knew it, and they all got very excited by it and burst into spontaneous applause at the end. And I thought, oh, I like this.
Yes.
I think I might make this my profession.
It is a natural drug, applause, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention spontaneous applause, because actually, as I've been privileged enough to listen to some of the session reels of Matt's, and the session reel for Maria, the orchestra burst into spontaneous applause at the end of the take.
Isn't that wonderful?
It is. It's incredible. Yeah.
Do you know what? I had a similar thing happen to me on my first recording session, which, funnily enough, was with Norman Newell as my producer. And Norman, of course, had written the lyric for Portrait of My Love for Matt, but under a different name, as he was Charles West, because he couldn't fess up that he was signed to EMI, and I think they imagined that they might be seen to be favouring, their own. So he gave out this independent name, Charles West, which I think he continued to write under for quite a few years thereafter. But I made my first album in Chapel Studios in New Bond Street. And now, of course, if you record, the backing track is done for you, and you come in and you put your bit on top and all of that. But my first couple of albums, I was live in the studio with the orchestra.
Wow.
And I remember recording Borsalino, which was taken off the album to be my first single. And when I finished the take of Borsalino, I kept hearing this tap, 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 tap. And I thought, what the hell is that? And it was all the violin players tapping their bows on the violin, which is violin speak for applause.
Brilliant.
The string players were applauding me, and I was chuffed to bits. And when I think back about it, recording my first album at 18 live in the studio with like a 25-piece orchestra, whereby if you make a mistake, you've all got to stop and you've all got to start again. And I kind of just sailed through it all. I amazed myself, how few nerves I had at that point. They kicked in later, but on that session, I just kind of flew through the whole thing.
Wow.
And that was a lovely memory.
Well, going back a little bit, how did Opportunity Knocks come about, and do you have fond memories of that show?
Well, I certainly do, because it gave me my big break, and it allowed me to take up on a 6-album deal with Philips Records, and I also went into the Palladium immediately after Opportunity Knocks on the back of my success on that show. So, yeah, I mean, it was an incredible springboard for new acts. It had the same kind of impact, possibly more of an impact than something like The X Factor, because if you remember at that time, we only had 3 television stations. We had BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV. So, we were getting immense audiences. We were getting, 13, 14 million every week. And these days, if a show like Gary Tracy, picks up 4 or 5 million, they think it's amazing. Well, we were getting triple that on some occasions.
Yeah. But how did it come about?
How did it come about? Well, I started playing piano in pubs and extending my repertoire and getting good. And my dad thought that it might be a good idea to write off to Thames Television for the application forms for Opportunity Knocks. And I got an audition. My audition at 16 was at Chelsea Barracks, which of course would never happen now because of the security.
Yeah.
But yeah, I auditioned on a horrible piano, a horrible upright, some of the notes missing. So they didn't do me a lot of favors in terms of the instrument that they provided me with. However, that afternoon, I was the only person that they filmed and that they photographed and whose details they took. And so I came away from the audition thinking that perhaps I had a good chance of going on the show. And indeed, we got the letter a few weeks later saying you've passed and we look forward to having you on Opportunity Knocks. Well, I thought that it would be immediate. However, because there was such a huge waiting list to get on the show because it was so popular, it was actually 2 years before I got on the show.
Wow.
But I didn't get on until I was 18.
Wow.
And I imagined by then that they had forgotten all about me. So I decided that my way into show business is that I would become a butler in redcoat.
Yeah.
But you couldn't sign to be a redcoat until you were 18. So I took some menial jobs just to fill out some time. I went and worked in the record department of W.H. Smith's in Kings a year. And then I worked as an office boy in a theatrical agency for a year. And it was whilst I was there, we got the letter from Thames to say, your time is now.
Wow.
But they did. They made me wait 2 years to get on. And I mean, obviously, I was very disturbed at the time because I thought they'd forgotten all about me. But when I reflect, when I think back on it, I actually managed to have a better hold on success at 18 than I think I would have done at 16. So they did me a favour in a roundabout kind of a way.
Yeah.
And away we went. As I say, show, I got all these offers companies, but I plumped for Philips because I was going to be on the same record label as my all-time favourite female singer, Dusty Springfield. So
I know.
And how did Norman Newell come into the picture?
Norman was drafted in because they thought that he would be the perfect record producer for me because of his success with Mrs. Mills and Russ Conway. He was viewed as kind of like the piano player's producer. He was top notch. And my first meeting with Norman, I met him in one of the offices at Philips Records, and he just barked song titles at me. He said, do you know such and such? And do you know such and such? And one after the other, I was able to reel them off and play them to him. And he said, he said, I think we're going to have no problems here. He said, I think it's going to be great. And we became firm friends from the word go. And I went on to do, I was contracted to do 6 albums with him for Philips. But after I left Philips, I did another 2 albums with him for Warwick. So we did 8 albums in total. And he was a lovely man. Great friend.
One thing you might not know is he did actually produce Matt as well. Although only 2 songs, he did actually produce Matt with 2 songs for a Parade of the Pops LP in 1961.
Oh my word! Well, that was before any of the big success, then, wasn't it?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
So Matt was doing session work at that point?
I think he just signed to Parlophone, but I think he would have had only Portrait out by that time. Right. And so he did this session. It was because he'd been doing Parade of the Pops on the radio quite a lot, and there was a spin-off album, and it was Norman who produced the spin-off album, and Matt sang 2 songs on that.
But Matt would have done Fred Flange by then, wouldn't he?
He would have done Fred Flange by then, yes, definitely.
Oh, right. Because I apart from the CDs of Matt's that I own, I've also got the Peter Sellers albums. I've got songs.
Yeah, songs singing Sellers.
So did you have much of a say in the direction that your recordings took at that point, or was that really down to Norman?
The first album was kind of sort of standards and songs that were popular at the time. My second album was called All Time Piano Hits, where I did my own version of things like Cy Saddle, Trudy, Canadian Sunset, all songs that have been hits for other piano players. And then I started on a run of sing-along albums, a la Mrs. Mills, because I figured Norman thought that there'd been such success for Glad Mills EMI that perhaps I could have similar success with those kind of songs. And also, it was at a time when we had Max Bygraves making the sing-along albums. In fact, I'm very surprised Matt never did a sing-along with Matt.
Now, listen, I know in those early years you were heavily cosseted by your parents, your dad, Tom, giving up his job to go on the road with you. And while he had your best interests at heart, do you regret the fact that you didn't have any social life much?
Yes, I mean, I've spoken about this before. my dad coming on the road with me as a road manager um, was a double-edged sword, really, because first of all, it's your dad, so he's got your best interests at heart, and he's going to look after you, and he's going to, you know, make a hotel booking, do your VAT, look after the money side and everything. So that aspect is all wonderful, but the downside of it is it's your dad, and he's
Yeah.
keeping an eye on you 24/7, you know. And when we went out on the road, I was 18, 19 at a time when, most kids were out there having fun, going out with their mates, having love affairs, all of that. And I wasn't really allowed any of that. It was all
No.
work, work, work. And when I've spoken about this in the past, I've always said, my memory of those early days is all the inside of theatres and hotels and going up and down the motorways, spending hours and hours in the car getting to gigs. So I was I was grateful that he was there and taking care of me, but it did stunt, I think, my emotional growth because I wasn't having friendships, and I wasn't having the kind of life that most
Good.
teenagers, people in their early 20s. But
Now,
I'd wanted a career in show business, and it was offered to me on a plate, so I wasn't about to say no at that, and I just went along with it all. And on reflection, I did the right thing because it allowed me to build a career, put money away, buy my first house, and my dad was a lovely man, and I'm grateful for his involvement in my life. But a little more freedom at that time would have been appreciated, I think.
now, you publicly came out as gay in an interview with Gay
Oh,
Times in
oh,
2004.
yes, of course I did. I came out in the press.
Yes, in Gay Times in 2004 at the age of 50. Now,
50.
why did you wait so long?
Well, I wouldn't have come out publicly while either of my parents were still alive.
So
Um,
they never knew.
oh well, my mother did. I never had that conversation with Dad because I often said that he wasn't fully comfortable with the gay thing. A lot of my friends were gay, and he saw the kind of friends that I was making and what have you. So he was an intelligent man. He would have put two and two together and come up with four. But I sensed that it wouldn't be a good conversation to have with him because if he took it badly,
Well, you can't take it back.
uh, and also it wouldn't have just affected how we were as father and son.
Yeah.
It would have affected our business as well as artist and road manager. And we spent a lot of time together, and I didn't want to make him feel uncomfortable. And also, we're talking about the early 70s when it was not encouraged for, performers to come out openly as gay. It's
No.
a lot more different now.
So what about Susan, Gina and Philip? Did they know?
Yeah, yeah, they've always been aware.
Okay. Well, my mum and dad met when they were both married to other people, and I was actually born before their decree nieces came through, and it was a big deal back then to have a baby out of wedlock. So luckily, two of his best friends who wrote the showbiz scandal columns in Melody Maker and New Musical Express kept it quiet, or it quite literally would have ended his career. Now, as you said, things were very different in the 60s and 70s, and people weren't that tolerant. The press had the tools to end careers. Were you worried about anyone finding out about your sexuality in those earlier years then?
Well, I certainly didn't shout it from the rooftops. I thought that it could be harmful. And there had been various scandals or so-called scandals of people being outed in the press and what have you, and it very much affected their careers. So I didn't want to do anything that might harm my chances. So I kept it all to myself, and I look back now and I think it was an interesting time because dealing with something like that on your own is hard enough. But at that point, I'd been thrown into the spotlight. I'm in all the teen magazines. I'm being feted by the press. So you had all these additional worries, and somehow I managed to sort it all out in my mind and continue without having to go into therapy or anything like that.
No,
But
that's now, isn't it?
now there are out gay pop stars. There are gay
It's no
story.
big deal, is it?
No, and nobody, my
Alcoholism, even drug abuse, nobody even bats an eyelid anymore.
no, my young nieces have always grown up knowing they've got a gay uncle, and they think it's cool, you know,
Brilliant.
and it's really as it should be. Basically, it's no big deal.
No, it isn't, darling. Now, look, the business can be a hard slog and it's sprinkled with ups and downs. What motivates you when times are tough then?
Um, well, times have been tough because a career always has peaks and valleys. Unless you're somebody extremely lucky, like a Shirley Bassey or a Tom Jones, and they manage to keep their careers on one level. But I started off my first professional engagement after Opportunity Knocks was to go into the Palladium, the London Palladium, for 2 weeks supporting Jack Jones. Now, most performers work throughout their lives in the hope that they're going to get to the London Palladium. I was there within weeks. So I realised I've always been a realist. I knew that level of work would not always be open to. If you start in the Palladium with a 25-piece orchestra backing you, and you're not prepared at some point down the line to go into a summer season at the White Rock Pavilion in Hastings with organ, bass, and drums, you're opening yourself up to a whole load of disappointment. What motivates me always through good times and bad, that I love to play and I love to entertain, and I've been extremely lucky over the years to be given various opportunities which I took seriously. And I, away from the piano stuff, I got offered musicals, I got offered pantomimes, so I had to learn other skills. I had to go to vocal coaching, I had to go to dance lessons. Mind you, I live in constant fear of my agent ringing up and saying, "Oh, guess what? I've got you Strictly Come Dancing."
I want to see you on that.
Horrible. Oh, it would be horrible. I would be the Anne Widdecombe of that season.
And it's got to be very watchable.
But,
Yeah.
but basically, what I'm saying is that I had a bash.
Yeah, but Russell Grant did it, who's a great friend of mine. And I mean, everyone thought he was going to be awful, and he was bloody marvellous.
Do you know what Strictly did for him?
What?
He did Strictly Come Dancing, and the next gig that he got after that was he went into the Palladium to play the Wizard in The Wizard of Oz. Now, the opportunities that a show like that opens up are like no other.
Exactly.
I mean, had he not done that, they would never have offered him something like that.
No.
So
But the audience loved him, you see, and that's what it's all about. I think it'd be the same for you.
Oh, but it would be gross. It would be hideous.
But so entertaining, darling. Now, look, you've done 3 seasons at the London Palladium, had umpteen recording successes, TV credits, your own radio shows, appeared in 5 musicals, and had great success as a composer and lyricist, as well as a plethora of live tour dates. But what's been the highlight of your illustrious career?
Speaking to you, Michelle.
Of course.
In my career now. But it's a pleasure, and it's lovely to catch up with you after a few years. The absolute highlight. Well, there have been several. I was chuffed to do the Royal Variety performance after as a kid watching it on the TV and imagining myself to be in that situation at some point in my life. And there I was in 1975 doing just that. Um, I played Las Vegas for the first time a few years ago, uh,
Indeed,
and,
yes.
and I was 65 by then. And you get to a point in your career and you think, well, that's never going to happen. And then, of course, I get invited to take part in that television show, Last Laugh in Vegas, with my lovely friends Sue Pollard and Anita Harris and Bernie Clifton,
Well,
and
we're going to get onto that a little later.
so I consider that to be a highlight because I never imagined for one moment that. My first gold disc,
Yeah, that's exciting.
that's something that I was really chuffed about.
Great. Well, Dad's idols in his youth listening to Radio Luxembourg were Perry Como and Frank Sinatra. But who was your idol as a young man?
Pianistically, Russ Conway. My mum and dad had loads of Russ's albums and singles in their collection, and as I was learning as a kid, I used to play along with them. And I think as a direct result, perhaps some of his influence rubbed off on me. And later on in life, um, Russ became a chum. He
Yeah,
became
well, he was great friends of Daddy's. He used to come round and play the piano at the house. And of course, as a young child, I was fascinated by the fact that he had only 9 fingers. And
that,
of course, he became a member of the Niners Club, as did Dave Allen, etc. So it was fascinating. And how he played with only 9, it was just wonderful. As a kid, it's like, wow.
you would never know that he had a finger the
No.
way that um, he was like a wizard at the keyboard.
Oh, he's brilliant.
And when I did my summer season in Eastbourne some years later, I got to know Russ because he lived there. He lived in Eastbourne, and he used to come every Wednesday matinee and sit in the royal box, and then we would have tea afterwards and discuss the meaning of life and all of that. By that time, he was more or less semi-retired. But the one thing that always fascinated me about Russ is how generous he was. In that I came along as an 18-year-old, this new kid on the block, and in the early 70s took away a lot of potential work for Russ, and yet he was very magnanimous about it, and said, "Oh no, it's your time." And of course, I had a similar experience about 10 years later when Richard Clayderman came on the scene and started stealing work away from me. So what goes around comes around, it's.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, who would you say had the most profound impact on your life?
You mean personally or.
Whatever you prefer to answer.
Um, well, certainly Russ, because let's say I copied a lot of his style, I think. In terms of flamboyancy and learning to give something for people to watch at while I played the piano, um, Liberace. Um, I, I went through a phase of very bright outfits, which were very Liberace influenced. Um, in terms of composers and people who I aspired to be like, Burt Bacharach
Yeah.
was a big hero of mine. So professionally, those kind of names. Personally, my mum and dad were brilliant. I mean, and it's not really until your parents have gone that you think, "Oh God, I wish I'd sat down and talked to them about this or that or whatever," and then of course it's too late.
Yeah,
But
absolutely right.
but let me tell you that I had surrogate parents after the death of my own, in that my lovely friends Teddy Johnson and Pearl Carr stepped up, and we became really, really close friends to the point that they referred to me as the adopted son.
Oh,
Um, so I was very lucky to have them in my life as well. And let me just tell you something about Pearl and Teddy. When they were huge fans of your dad, I don't know whether you knew that.
I did,
When,
yeah.
but when I bought my box set of The Singer's Singer, they came round to my house one time and they said, "Oh, what's this?" And I said, "Oh, it's a new box set of Matt Monro." Oh, get us a copy, get us a copy. So I had to order up a copy to get to Teddy and Pearl, and they played it a lot. They were great fans.
Oh.
And I tell you who else was a great fan was somebody that I met through Pearl and Ted because they were great friends of his, was Ernie Wise.
Yeah, Ernie, well, he was a very good friend.
And Ernie, this is not bull, this is all for real. I remember Ernie, because we were talking about favourite songs. And I said, "What's your favourite song, Ernie?" And he said, "The Shadow of Your Smile, sung by Matt Monro." He
Oh.
specified your dad's version. And in fact, when Pearl and Ted and Ernie and his wife Doreen came to see me playing cabaret at the Green Room at the Cafe Royal, I do an audience request spot at the end of my performance, and Ernie stood up and went, "The shadow of your smile."
Well, Ernie and Doreen bought a condo in the same complex as ours because Daddy had invited them over and they fell in love with it. And there were a couple of them that bought there. So we saw him, not, a lot, but at least a couple of times a year. And of course, Daddy was great friends with Eric. So, it was special friends that you can't replace them, can you?
No, exactly. Let me tell you my other. Let me tell you my other Morecambe and Wise story, and this pleased me a great deal. I heard recently that when they sold Eric Morecambe's Rolls Royce, the new buyer took possession of the car, and when he opened up the glove box, there were 3 Bobby Crush 8-track cartridges.
Hey!
Eric Morecambe played my music in his Rolls Royce.
Oh, bless. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Well, talking about your recordings, they include your debut album, Bobby Crush, which reached number 15 in the album charts. And not including compilations, you've made 13 studio albums, earning several gold discs. But what's your go-to karaoke song?
Oh, that's an interesting question. The last time I got involved in karaoke, I don't have a specific song, but the last time I did karaoke, I did "Do Do Ron Ron."
Yeah.
Monday and my heart stood still, and the reason I did that is that it's not very rangy. I can keep within the range, and it's a jolly old song, and everybody sings along. So it disguises my voice as I'm singing it. So,
You love that one then.
yeah. I'm not a I'm a fan of karaoke in terms of sitting and watching my mates get up and make a fool of themselves. But myself.
So, Matt appeared on Desert Island Discs, and he picked things like Air on a G-String by the Swingles and things like that. But what songs would you take with you if you went to a desert island, do you think?
I have a few because I've thought about this in case anybody ever asks me to do.
Yes, absolutely.
And I would have "Yellow Roses on Their Gowns" by Johnny Mathis, which is not one of his well-known songs, but it's on one of his albums, and it's always been my favourite track of his. I would have either "Going Back" or "All I See Is You" by Dusty Springfield.
Oh, yes.
If you go for one Dusty, I would have to make a choice between those two. "MacArthur Park" by Richard Harris,
Richard Harris, yeah.
which I was fascinated by as a kid because I think it was the first 7-minute single that I ever owned, and I was fascinated by the fact that it was partially classical, partially pop. There was that big instrumental break in the middle, and I thought it was groundbreaking. And I've always got a buzz out of that. So I would
Well, I
have that.
just tell you here, Richard Harris and Daddy were in the Bahamas, and as usual, they both had a lot to drink and were having a high old time. And Richard asked Daddy very seriously, he said, I'd like to be a singer, you know. He said, I'm really into it. He said, but, you know, I don't want to make a fool of myself, etc. And anyway, Daddy talked him into it. And the first one was MacArthur Park. And he sent the guy who wrote it a Rolls Royce, and Daddy got a bottle of scotch, and Dad he always felt wronged.
But then, of course, Richard Harris went on to do the movie of Camelot.
Yes, he did.
Or of Camelot. Once again, he didn't have a huge range, but a very distinctive voice. I'm trying to think of others.
I've got the album of Tramp Shining. That's how much I love MacArthur Park.
Oh, it's lovely. It's a lovely album. I still have the vinyl.
So do I.
Kept the vinyl. And do you know what? That album ended up in my Santa sack. That was one of my Christmas presents. And it ended up in
nice.
my bed when I would have been about, 10, I suppose.
Well, I've got the vinyl, but then when the CD came out, I bought that so I didn't ruin the vinyl completely because I played it that many times, you know. But Dad always said the worst fate that could befall him was getting to a hotel with no television in it. He didn't care what he watched. It was totally escapism for him. Now, we first went to Barbados in 1970 on the recommendation of John Barry, which was before the advent of package tours. Now, he'd hired a beachside bungalow on St James's Beach and arranged for a television rental for the weeks we were there. But the only thing he could pick up was old black and white episodes of Paint and Place and Tales of the Unexpected. He was in his element, mate. Now, what's the one thing you can't live without?
A piano, of course. I still play every day. And I think it's a wise move because I don't want...
You're trying to get better?
No, I fear things like arthritis. You know, as long as the piano fingers
keep it limber,
supple, then I can continue performing. So I'm a great one for that phrase. If you continue to use it, you never lose it. So I play every day and make sure that the fingers are still working. And so I couldn't live without a piano. I couldn't live without music generally. No. So I would need a CD player somewhere along the way. When I used to tour, and before the advent of CDs and what have you, I used to tour a record player.
Oh, right.
Vinyl and have music going on in hotel rooms wherever I was playing.
It's funny you should say that. Daddy was doing a theatre tour and Bob Monkhouse, and they just delivered his very first album, and it was hot off the press. And Bob Monkhouse walked into the dressing room, and Dad had his head in his hand, and he was like, oh my gosh. And Bob said, what's the matter, Matt? He said, Bob, it's tinny. It sounds tinny. It's dreadful. And Bob nonchalantly walked over to the record player, under which it was sitting on a tin ashtray, took the ashtray away, and Daddy went, oh yeah, that's better. So yeah, record player was important. Now listen, now nearing 40 pantomime appearances under your belt and inducted into the Panto Archive Hall of Fame, well done, an honour bestowed on only a handful of entertainers. Now, what prompted you originally as a teenager to take juvenile lead roles in pantomime? Was it the money or was it the experience? Or both?
Two, really. Out of the blue, the year after I did Option Knox, I got invited to do my first panto and to play Aladdin. I played the title role, and it was at the ABC Theatre in Stockton, which is now known as the Globe Theatre. And I was Aladdin, and Stephen Lewis, Blakey from On the Buses, was
yes.
I hate you, Aladdin. And do you remember Tommy Bruce?
Yes, of course.
Bruce, he played Wishy Washy.
Yeah.
He played brother. Now, at that point, I think Tommy was about 25 years older than me. So we didn't really look like brothers, but you had to suspend disbelief, And that was the start of it. That was the start of my panto career, and I did one every year after that. And I played Prince Charming and Jack going up the beanstalk and Dick Whittington and all of those. But when you get into your 30s and creeping towards your 40s, it's not seemly to take on these juvenile leads anymore. So you have to make a choice. And so you either go into dad roles like Alderman Fitzwarren or Baron Hardup, which are always, or you go down the Dame route. And so I played my first Dame in 2000, and I played it at the Forum Theatre in Billingham, right up in the northeast, because I thought if I do this and I fall flat on my face, I'm far enough away from London for people not to know. But the first success, and I got wonderful reviews, and I continued in that role right up until 2 years ago when I did my final panto, because I've stopped now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I have, yes.
Oh, no, you haven't.
Oh, yes, I have. I figured that 37 pantos is probably enough for anyone. And it's really hard work. But as Dame, I used to do 10 costume changes per show. So on a 2-show day, 20 costume changes. And some managements now are asking you to do 3-show days, 10:30 in the morning, 2:30 and 7. So on a 3-show day, 30 costume changes. And then at the end of the night, the chorus, girls and boys are knocking on your door saying, "Oh, we're going clubbing now. Would you like to come with us?" And I'm like a wet rag in the middle of the floor.
I want a respirator.
After my last one, it really wore me out, and I was really bushed. And I made the conscious decision that maybe I should stop at that point and just enjoy my Christmases and fill the fridge with lots of stuff from M&S and just watch the telly. Not have to get up at the dawn and be putting false eyelashes on at 9 o'clock in the morning.
And that seems like a good point just to leave our conversation for now. When Michelle and Bobby get started, there's very little stopping them. So we've split this particular podcast into 2 halves, and we'll hear more from Bobby next month. But don't forget, if you have any questions or stories or anything you want to write to us about at all, please contact us at pod@mattmonro.com. And until then, we'll see you next month.